In the farthest reaches of the Andromeda Vale, where stars blinked like sleepy eyes and nebulae painted the sky in hues of violet and gold, stood the royal palace of Zintra, a towering citadel carved from moonstone and starlight. Its spires reached toward the heavens, as if trying to pluck constellations from the dark, and its gardens bloomed with bioluminescent flowers that pulsed gently with the rhythm of alien hearts. This was the seat of power for Queen Thalera, ruler of the Velari Dominion, a being both feared and revered across 7 systems. She stood over 2 meters tall, her alabaster skin glowing faintly under the twin suns, and her hair, fiery red, like molten copper spun into silk, cascaded down her back like a banner of war. Her eyes, sharp and golden, missed nothing. To look upon her was to witness sovereignty incarnate. Regal, commanding, untouchable. And yet, on the day she first met Doran, she laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, not exactly. It was rich, full-bodied, echoing through the grand audience chamber like thunder wrapped in velvet. He had arrived unannounced, escorted by 3 armed Velari guards who looked more confused than threatening. Doran was barely 170, with messy brown hair that defied gravity, wide green eyes that darted around like he expected the ceiling to fall, and a uniform that looked like it had been slept in for a week. He wore no armor, carried no visible weapon, and introduced himself simply as a diplomatic liaison from Earth's United Planetary Council. When asked why he was alone and unarmed in the heart of an empire known for disintegrating ambassadors who blinked wrong, he shrugged and said, "I figured if you wanted me dead, I wouldn't have made it past the front door." Thalera had stepped forward, her long silver gown whispering against the polished floor, and peered down at him like one might examine a curious insect. "You are too tiny to be my bodyguard, human," she said, amusement dancing in her voice. "Are you lost? Did your transport crash? Or did someone misplace the actual delegation?" Doran didn't flinch. He just grinned, hands tucked behind his back. "Not lost, not crashing, and definitely not misplaced. I'm here because I volunteered. You've had 3 assassination attempts in the last 6 months. Your last protector got vaporized by a plasma grenade disguised as a peace offering. The council thought maybe someone less obvious might work better." She tilted her head, her crimson locks shifting like flame in wind. "And you think you can protect me? You look like a strong breeze could knock you into next week." "Maybe," he admitted. "But I also don't look like a threat. That's the point. Assassins go after the big guys with the rifles and the scowls. They don't expect the guy carrying tea and asking about your favorite flower." The courtiers gasped. Even the guards stiffened. No one spoke to the queen like that. But Thalera didn't order him executed. She didn't even frown. She just stared at him, then burst out laughing again. This time so hard she had to brace a hand against the armrest of her throne. And so, against all logic, all tradition, all sense, Doran stayed. First, it was a joke. The palace staff whispered behind their hands. The ministers rolled their eyes. The royal guard treated him like a pet the queen had picked up on a whim. They called him the speck, the twig, the breath of air. But Doran didn't care. He moved quietly, observed constantly, and asked questions no one else dared to. He learned the layout of the palace, the hidden passages, the ventilation shafts, the timing of patrols. He studied the queen's schedule, her moods, the way she held her cup when she was annoyed versus when she was merely tired. He noticed things, the slight tremor in the hand of a visiting diplomat, the flicker of a security camera before it went dark, the way certain guards lingered too long near the eastern balcony. Then came the incident with the poison wine. It happened during the treaty banquet of Zelvorn, a lavish affair meant to solidify peace between Zintra and the amphibious clans of Mordraxis. Doran, dressed in a simple servant's tunic, moved among the guests with a tray of drinks. He wasn't supposed to serve the royal table. That was a sacred duty. But when the designated steward slipped on a patch of spilled nectar, Doran stepped in without hesitation. He poured the wine for the queen with careful precision, bowing slightly as he presented the goblet. Thalera raised it to toast the ambassador, but Doran suddenly reached out and gently tapped the rim with his finger. "Begging your pardon, your majesty," he said softly, "but this one has a faint metallic scent. May I suggest the second bottle instead? The vintage is older, and I believe it pairs better with the dish." Her golden eyes narrowed. She sniffed the wine. Nothing. But she trusted the strange little human more than she cared to admit. She set the goblet aside and accepted the second. Later, when the original bottle was tested, it was found laced with Vithar root, a slow-acting neurotoxin that would have paralyzed her within hours and killed her by morning. That night, Thalera summoned Doran to her private chambers. She stood by the arched window, silhouetted against the twin moons, her red hair catching the pale light like embers. "You saved my life," she said, her voice low. "Why?" He shrugged, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "Because it's my job. You weren't even supposed to be serving tonight." "No, but I saw the steward slip. And I saw the way the sommelier hesitated before handing that bottle to me. Tiny things. But in this place, tiny things get people killed." She turned to face him fully. "You're not like the others. You don't grovel. You don't flatter. You don't fear me." "I respect you," he corrected. "There's a difference. Fear makes people stupid. Respect keeps them honest." For the first time since ascending the throne, Thalera felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not warmth, not quite, but a flicker, like a dormant circuit coming back online. She dismissed him with a nod, but her gaze followed him as he left, small and unassuming, yet somehow filling the room more than any armored warrior ever had. From that moment, Doran was no longer a joke. He became part of her daily routine. He walked beside her during council meetings, silent but present. He reviewed security reports, flagged inconsistencies, suggested improvements. He trained with the Royal Guard not to match their strength, but to exploit their blind spots. He taught them how humans fought, unpredictably, creatively, with tools and tricks rather than brute force. He once disarmed a 7-foot-tall Velari elite using nothing but a folded napkin and a well-placed trip. The guards started calling him Shadow Step. The people began to notice him too. Children in the lower districts waved when they saw him. Market vendors offered him free fruit. He visited the infirmaries, brought books to the schools, listened to grievances the nobles ignored. He didn't do it for praise, he barely acknowledged it when given, but word spread. The tiny human who protected the queen was kind, clever, and utterly fearless. And Thalera? She watched, always watching. She caught herself looking for him in crowds. She found excuses to walk the same corridors at the same time. She started asking for his opinion on matters beyond security, trade routes, cultural exchanges, even interior design. "Do you think the throne room needs more plants?" she once asked. "Plants are good," he replied. "They make people relax. Also, they're hard to hide bombs in." One evening, during a rare moment of peace, they stood together on the sky terrace, overlooking the capital city glittering below like a spilled jewel box. The air was cool, scented with night-blooming xylora blossoms. "You know," she said, gazing at the stars, "in Velari tradition, the monarch does not marry. We are wedded to our people, to our duty. Emotion is seen as weakness. Attachment, a liability." Doran sipped from a mug of herbal tea, one of the few earth comforts allowed in the palace. "Sounds lonely." "It is what it is," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. He turned to her. "You don't have to be lonely. You're allowed to want things, even silly things, like someone to argue with about whether pineapple belongs on pizza." She gave him a sideways glance. "Pineapple does not belong on pizza. See? Now we're arguing. Progress." She almost smiled. Almost. Then the alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the terrace. Sirens wailed like wounded beasts. Within seconds, the palace was on lockdown. Doran was already moving, pulling a compact pulse pistol from his sleeve and scanning the skyline. "What is it?" Thalera demanded, her regal composure snapping back into place. "Sky breach," he said. "2 unidentified vessels, descending fast. No clearance codes. Weapons hot." She activated her wristcom. "Deploy interceptors. Seal the royal wing. Alert the guard." But Doran shook his head. "Too slow. They're not after the palace. They're after you. And they're landing here." As if on cue, 2 sleek black ships tore through the clouds, skimming the towers before touching down on the northern courtyard with eerie silence. Hatches opened. Out stepped figures clad in obsidian armor, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. The mark of Korvath, a rebel faction sworn to destroy the monarchy, was etched into their chest plates. Thalera stepped forward, radiant and unafraid. "You dare set foot on sacred ground?" The lead assassin raised a plasma cannon. "Your reign ends tonight, tyrant." Doran didn't hesitate. He lunged, shoving Thalera behind a stone pillar just as a searing beam of energy scorched the space where she'd stood. The blast cracked the marble, sending shards flying. The fight erupted like a storm. Valari guards poured in from all sides, weapons blazing. The assassins returned fire, their movements precise, brutal. One by one, the defenders fell. Doran moved like a ghost, ducking, rolling, firing precise shots that disabled weapons or shattered joints. He wasn't strong, but he was fast, unpredictable. He used the environment. Smoke from ruptured conduits, fallen debris, even the reflective surface of a fountain to blind an attacker. But there were too many. Thalara fought beside him, her royal blade humming with energy, each strike deadly and exact. Yet even she was pushed back, her strength waning. An assassin landed a blow to her side, cracking her armor. She stumbled. Doran saw it happen in slow motion. Time narrowed. Sound faded. All he saw was her, pale, bleeding, falling. Something inside him snapped. He charged, not with strategy, but with raw, desperate fury. He fired his last charge into the assassin's knee, dropped the pistol, and tackled the man with a snarl. They crashed to the ground. The warrior swung wildly, but Doran twisted, grabbed a shard of broken ceramic, and drove it into the joint of the suit's neck seal. A hiss, a scream. The armor depressurized. More came. He fought like a man possessed. He bit. He kicked. He used every dirty trick he'd learned in back-alley brawls on Earth. He threw sand into eyes, jammed fingers into weak points, used his small size to slip under defenses. When a plasma rifle was aimed at Thalara's head, he threw himself in front of it. The shot hit his shoulder, burning through fabric and flesh. He screamed, but didn't fall. Instead, he lunged forward, grabbing the barrel, twisting it upward as it fired again. The recoil knocked the assassin off balance. Doran slammed his forehead into the visor, dazed the enemy, then ripped the weapon free and fired point-blank. Silence. Smoke curled from the wreckage. The remaining assassins lay dead or disabled. The sky began to lighten with dawn. Doran collapsed to his knees, clutching his wounded shoulder, blood soaking through his shirt. Thalara crawled to him, her face streaked with ash and tears. "You idiot!" she whispered, her voice breaking. "You absolute fool. Why would you do that?" He tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "Told you. I was here to protect you. You're not supposed to die protecting me." "Didn't die," he said weakly. "Just took a little vacation in Pain Town." She pulled him close, holding him against her, ignoring the blood, the heat, the danger. "You are the most infuriating, reckless, maddening creature I have ever met. And yet," he murmured, "you haven't thrown me out the window yet." She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, she pressed her forehead to his, a Valari gesture of deep trust, of soul acknowledgement. It was reserved for life mates, for those bound by oath and spirit. The surviving guards watched in stunned silence. Afterward, Doran was taken to the Royal Infirmary. The healers marveled at his resilience. Human biology shouldn't have survived that wound, let alone the toxins in the assassin's blade. But he did. He always did. Thalara visited every day. She brought him books, jokes, strange alien fruits that tasted like burnt rubber but made him laugh anyway. She sat by his bed, sometimes saying nothing, just watching him sleep. Once, he woke to find her holding his hand, her thumb tracing slow circles over his knuckles. "Did I miss anything important?" he asked groggily. She squeezed his hand. "Only the entire galaxy wondering why their queen hasn't left your side for 3 days." He grinned. "Tell them I'm irreplaceable." "You are," she said, and the weight of those words hung in the air like a promise. Weeks passed. He recovered. The palace rebuilt. Life resumed. But something had changed. The way Thalara looked at him now, softer, warmer, layered with something neither of them dared name. The way he no longer referred to her as Your Majesty when they were alone. The way they argued about everything, from politics to music to whether the royal cat should be allowed on the throne. Doran. "Yes, democracy starts small, Thalara. That cat tried to eat the prime minister." Then came the Festival of Twin Moons, a celebration of unity and renewal. The entire city glowed with lanterns, and the palace hosted a grand ball. Nobles, diplomats, and dignitaries from a dozen worlds filled the halls. Doran attended not as a guard, not as a servant, but as something else. He wore a tailored suit of deep blue, a gift from Thalara, embroidered with subtle silver threads that shimmered like stars. She appeared at the top of the staircase, breathtaking in a gown of liquid silver, her red hair woven with diamonds and flame orchids. The crowd hushed. Music swelled. She descended, her eyes locked on him. When she reached him, she extended her hand. Not the formal gesture of royalty receiving a subject. This was different, intimate, deliberate. "Dance with me," she said. He hesitated. "I don't know Velari dances. They involve a lot of arm-waving and interpretive sorrow." "I don't care," she said. "Dance with me like your people do." So he did. He took her hand, placed the other on her waist, and led her in a simple earth waltz. Smooth, gentle, close. At first the courtiers stared. Then, slowly, some began to smile. Others joined. Even the stoic guards found partners. They danced beneath the crystal dome, surrounded by light and music, two beings from opposite ends of existence, moving as one. Later, on the balcony, under a sky dusted with stars, Thalera turned to him. "You were never just my bodyguard, were you?" she asked. "No," he admitted. "I was hoping to be more. If you'd let me." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "The law says the monarch cannot marry, that we must remain apart, untouched. So break the law," he said. "You're the queen. Who's gonna stop you?" She laughed, then grew serious. "What if I lose you? What if protecting me costs you your life?" He touched her cheek, his fingers gentle against her cool skin. "Everything worth having comes with risk. But I'd rather spend one lifetime loving you than 1,000 living without you." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. When she opened them, they shimmered with unshed tears. "Then let the stars bear witness," she said. "Let the galaxies hear it. Let the fools and kings and rebels of every world know. This tiny, impossible human, who walked into my palace with nothing but courage and a bad haircut, is mine. And I am his." And though no official decree was issued, though no ceremony was held, from that night on, things changed. Doran still walked beside her, still kept his pulse pistol hidden, still made terrible jokes at state dinners. But now, when she reached for his hand, it wasn't for protection. It was because she wanted to. The people noticed. The whispers grew. The children drew pictures of King Doran, riding a dragon beast made of stardust. The artists painted murals of the queen and her small, brave consort standing against the darkness. And when another assassination plot was uncovered, this time from within the royal council, Doran didn't just stop it. He exposed it. With calm precision, he laid out the evidence, named the conspirators, and ensured justice was served without bloodshed. He did it not with rage, but with quiet authority. And when he turned to Thalera afterward, she didn't thank him. She kissed him, right there in front of the entire court. Gasps, silence, then cheers. Even the oldest, grimmest minister wiped a tear from his eye. The universe kept turning. Wars flared. Peace was fragile. But in the heart of Zintra, in a palace of moonstone and starlight, something new had taken root. Love. Strange, improbable, defiant love. The queen who was too proud to need anyone. The human who was too small to matter. Together, they proved that size doesn't define strength. That courage isn't measured in height or muscle, but in the willingness to stand, even when trembling, for someone you love. And when travelers from distant worlds came to see the legendary queen and her mysterious consort, they'd often find them on the sky terrace, side by side, watching the moon's rise. Sometimes, Thalera would tease him. "You know," she'd say, smirking, "you're still ridiculously tiny." He'd grin, wrapping an arm around her. "And you're still ridiculously tall. Guess we balance each other out." She'd lean into him, resting her head against his, a gesture so simple, so human, that it spoke louder than any crown or decree. "You were right, you know," she murmured once, years later, as the stars spun above them. "About what?" he asked. "That day you walked in. You said I needed someone less obvious. Someone they wouldn't expect." He chuckled. "Worked, didn't it?" "It did," she said softly, "because no one ever imagined that the man who would steal the heart of a queen was the one they laughed at first." And somewhere, in the quiet between heartbeats, the universe smiled. The peace that settled over Zintra in the years following the failed assassination was not the silence of emptiness, but the calm before a storm, one that no one saw coming, least of all Doran and Thalera. Their love had become legend, whispered in marketplaces, sung in ballads by wandering bards, even taught in interstellar diplomacy courses as the unlikely union. But legends, like stars, can burn bright before collapsing into darkness. It began with a dream. Thalera woke gasping in the middle of the night, her skin cold despite the warmth of their shared bed. The room was still, lit only by the soft glow of bioluminescent vines climbing the walls. Doran stirred beside her, half asleep, murmuring something unintelligible. She sat up, clutching her chest, heart pounding like a war drum. In the dream, she had stood atop the highest spire of the palace, looking down at a city consumed by fire. The sky rained ash. The twin moons were blackened, cracked like broken glass. And from the smoke emerged a figure, tall, crowned with antlers of shadow, eyes glowing violet. It spoke without sound, yet its voice echoed inside her skull. You have defied fate. You have chosen weakness. Now you will watch it burn. She didn't believe in prophecies. The Velari dismissed them as relics of a superstitious past. But this felt different, real, as if time itself had reached through the veil and touched her. Doran opened his eyes, instantly alert. You okay? She hesitated. I had a vision. He propped himself up on one elbow. A bad one. The worst. He didn't laugh, didn't dismiss it. He simply reached for her hand and said, Tell me, and so she did. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, we'll deal with it. Whatever's coming. We always do. But this time, the enemy wasn't an assassin in the dark or a rebel faction with outdated weapons. This time, the threat came from within the very fabric of the Dominion. Weeks passed. Life resumed its rhythm. Doran continued his duties, not as bodyguard, not merely as consort, but as advisor of cross-species relations, a title created just for him. He mediated disputes, strengthened alliances, and even helped design a new education system that included Earth history alongside Velari lore. Children learned about Shakespeare and star navigation in the same breath. Then, the first anomaly occurred. Deep in the archives beneath the palace, a labyrinth of ancient data crystals and forgotten relics, an energy surge erupted without warning. Sensors went offline. Guards reported seeing ghostly figures in the corridors, whispering in a language no translator could decode. When Doran and Thalera investigated, they found a single crystal pulsing with violet light, etched with symbols matching those from Thalera's dream. No one has touched this chamber in centuries, she said, voice tight. This crystal shouldn't even be active. Doran knelt, examining it. It's not just power. It's memory, like it's storing something. Before she could stop him, he reached out and touched it. A jolt shot through him. He collapsed, convulsing, eyes rolling back. Thalera caught him, screaming his name. For 3 days, he lay unresponsive, his body alive but his mind gone. Doctors, healers, psychics all failed to reach him. The palace mourned in silence. On the 4th night, Doran woke. But he wasn't alone. His voice was different when he spoke. Deeper, older. His eyes flickered between green and violet. He looked at Thalera and smiled. A smile that didn't belong to him. You've grown, daughter of Syl, he said in flawless Velari. I did not expect you to choose a human. Thalera froze. Who are you? I am Kael'thar, the voice replied. First seer of the Old Dominion. Guardian of the Threshold. I have slept within this vessel since the collapse. Your lover's mind is occupied, but he lives. For now. She backed away. Get out of him. Kael'thar, speaking through Doran, shook his head. I cannot. The seal has been broken. The threshold stirs. And soon, the devourer will wake. The devourer? She demanded. A being older than stars. A hunger that consumes realities. Long ago we trapped it beyond the veil. But our magic fades. Our bloodline weakens. Only the union of sovereign and outsider, the one foretold in the eclipse prophecy, can restore the seal. Thalera's breath caught. You mean, Doran and me? Yes, but the path is perilous. If you fail, all worlds die. If you succeed, one of you must remain behind, trapped, to guard the threshold. She stared at Doran's face, her husband, her love, and saw both him and the ancient spirit sharing the same shell. I won't let you take him, she whispered. Kael'thar sighed. You misunderstand. I do not wish to harm him. I need him, just as you do. But time is short. The cracks are spreading. As if on cue, the ground trembled. Alarms blared across the palace. Reports flooded in. Entire districts vanishing into rifts of nothingness. People blinking out of existence. Skies twisting into impossible geometries. The threshold was breaking. Over the next weeks, Doran lived in 2 worlds. By day he was himself, joking, loving, holding Thalera close. By night, Kael'thar surfaced, teaching her forbidden knowledge, revealing secrets of Veilari magic buried for millennia. Doran remembered none of it upon waking, but his hands bore strange scars, his dreams filled with equations and chants in dead languages. They trained together, Thalera learning to wield the ancient wards, Doran mastering the mental discipline needed to resist full possession. They traveled to the ruins of Zanvor, where the original seal was forged, and faced trials meant to break the weak. Illusions of loss, temptations of power, visions of each other dying. Once, Doran saw Thalera executed by her own counsel. He screamed, tried to save her, only to realize it wasn't real. Another time, she watched him walk into a portal and vanish, calling her name as the door sealed forever. "It's testing us," Doran said afterward, trembling, "to see if we're worthy, or if we'll break," she replied. But love, true love, isn't just passion. It's endurance. It's choosing someone again and again, even when the universe tries to tear them away. Their bond grew stronger, not despite the strain but because of it. They learned to communicate without words. A glance, a touch, a shared breath. Doran developed a way to signal when Kael'thar was near, a small twitch of his left eyebrow. Thalera would squeeze his hand, anchoring him. And then came the betrayal. Lord Malric, High Chamberlain and Thalera's most trusted advisor, was discovered communicating with a rogue sect known as the Voidbinders, fanatics who believed the Devourer should be freed, that consumption was the natural order. He had sabotaged the palace shields, weakened the archives, and fed information to the enemy. Confronted, Malric sneered. "You think love makes you strong? It makes you blind. You've let a human dictate policy. Share your bed. We're the mark of royalty. The old ways are dying because of you." Thalera didn't flinch. "The old ways also allowed tyrants like you to hide in plain sight." Doran stepped forward. "And I may be tiny, but I'm the one who noticed your shoes were wet after the vault breach. You weren't in the East Wing like you claimed. You were down there, planting the trigger." Malric lunged, but Thalera struck first. A single bolt of royal energy pierced his chest. He fell without a word. That night, they stood over the body, silent. "He was like a father to me," she said softly. "I know," Doran replied. "And that's what makes it hurt so much." She turned to him. "Do you regret it? Choosing me? This life?" He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I choose you in every universe, even if it kills me." The final journey began under the eclipse of Trelyun, when the twin moons aligned and the veil between worlds thinned. Guided by Kael'thar's knowledge, they traveled to the edge of being, a floating ruin suspended in a pocket dimension, where reality frayed at the edges. There, in the heart of the abyss, pulsed the seal of Zanvor, a massive ring of black stone humming with trapped energy. And beyond it, something vast and formless stirred, whispering promises of oblivion. To repair the seal, they needed to perform the rite of twin souls, a ritual requiring perfect harmony between two hearts, one of royal blood, one of foreign spirit. They had to step into the ring together, speak the binding words, and offer a piece of themselves. But the price remained: one must stay behind. As they prepared, Doran took Thalera's hands. "Let it be me." "No," she said fiercely. "I'm the queen. It's my duty. And I'm your husband. That's mine." They argued, pleaded, even laughed through tears. In the end, they made a pact. Whoever the threshold chose, they would accept it. No heroics, no sacrifices in secret. The ritual began. Wind howled from nowhere. The ground split. The devourer roared. Not with sound, but with absence. A scream of pure negation. The seal cracked open, revealing a chasm of swirling darkness. They stepped forward, hand in hand, chanting the ancient words. Light erupted from their joined palms, weaving into the fissure. The seal began to mend. Then pain. A force tore at them, probing, testing. Images flashed. Doran as a child, lost and afraid. Thalera crowned in sorrow. Their future unborn children, crying into silence. The threshold was judging them. And then, a voice. Neither Kael'thar's nor the Devourer's, but something older, spoke. One must remain, but not as prisoner, as guardian, willing, bound not by chains, but by love. The light intensified, the seal sealed, and Doran vanished. Thalera screamed, reaching for him, but he was gone. Pulled into the threshold, not as a sacrifice, but as its new warden. She collapsed, sobbing, pounding the stone. "Bring him back. You promised." But the wind carried only silence. She returned to Zintra broken. The court expected her to retreat, to grieve in solitude. Instead, she stood before the Grand Assembly and declared, "My husband is not dead. He is beyond, and I will find a way to bring him home." Years passed. She studied, explored, sent expeditions into the void, built machines to pierce dimensions. Doran became more than a memory, he became a symbol. Hope, proof that love could defy even cosmic law. And then, one quiet evening, as she sat in their favorite garden, sipping tea and watching the flowers pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, a breeze stirred, the air shimmered, and a familiar voice, hoarse but warm, said, "You know, I brought you something." She turned. There he stood, older, thinner, his hair streaked with silver, but his eyes, green, bright, full of mischief, were unchanged. "Doran?" she whispered. He grinned, holding out a small, glowing flower, one that bloomed only in the threshold. "Told you I'd come back." "How?" she breathed, rising slowly. "The threshold listens to love," he said. "And apparently, it got tired of me complaining about the lack of coffee." She ran to him, crashing into his arms, laughing and crying at once. They held each other like they might disappear again. And high above, the twin moons shone down, bearing witness to a truth written in starlight. No distance is too far, no fate too fixed, no love too small. Under twin moons and a sky painted with stars, Doran returned. Not as a ghost, not a memory, but real, warm, alive. Thalera ran to him, her heart breaking and mending in the same breath. He knelt, not in surrender, but in promise, placing a glowing threshold bloom in her palm. "I told you I'd find my way back," he whispered. She pulled him up and kissed him like the world had just begun. The palace rejoiced. The people wept with joy. Even the royal cat purred for 3 days straight. Doran wasn't just home. He was stronger, wiser, marked by the magic of the veil. Together, they rebuilt the ancient rites, not to trap, but to connect worlds, hearts, futures. No more secrets, no more sacrifices, just love, loud and unafraid. They walked the sky terrace every evening, hands entwined, laughing at old jokes. He still teased her about being too tall. She still called him my tiny hero. Children played in the gardens, singing songs of the queen and her human king. Diplomats bowed not just to power, but to partnership. Peace spread like wildfire across the systems. Alliance after alliance formed, inspired by their bond. Even the stars seemed brighter, as if the universe approved. One day, a letter arrived from Earth, official recognition. Doran Vale, honorary ambassador of infinite realms. He framed it and hung it next to a crayon drawing of him riding a space dragon. They adopted a child, an orphaned hybrid girl with white skin and wild brown curls. They named her Lyra. She called them both Mama, and it felt perfectly right. On their anniversary, Doran planted an earth oak in the palace courtyard. It grew fast, strong, its leaves shimmering silver under Zintran suns. Thalera declared a new law: no one is too small to matter. Love, not bloodline, would guide the Dominion's future. They danced again beneath the crystal dome. Older now, slower, but closer than ever. No alarms, no shadows, just music, light, and each other. When travelers asked how a human became the heart of an empire, Thalera smiled. "He didn't become the heart," she said, squeezing Doran's hand. "He gave us ours." And so, in a palace of moonstone and dreams, two souls from opposite ends of existence lived not just happily, but endlessly, together.